Okay, so it's about. So if you abide as awareness and you're aware of yourself as awareness without the content of experience, like you remove thoughts, feelings, your sense perceptions and your bodily sensations, and your awareness knowingly, would you equate that to deep sleep as being the same thing? Or would you say that you can be aware of yourself as awareness and be, awake in that knowing without any of the content of experience being present?
Yes, deep sleep is just the pure awareness of being. And then when thoughts and images are added to it, we call that the dream state. And when sensations and perceptions are added to it, we call it the waking state. But the awareness of being that is present in deep sleep, as deep sleep, remains present in the dreaming and waking states, but it just is veiled by those two states, so seems not to be present. But we are deeply asleep now, but with thoughts, images, sensations and perceptions. So we don't really enter a deep sleep state. That's a misnomer. We never enter a state. There's just the awareness of being, plus the awareness of thoughts and images, plus the awareness of sensations and perceptions. And then sensations and perceptions leave us. That's the dream states. Thinking and imagining leaves us. And we just remain as we are, the awareness of being. From the perspective of the waking state, we say, I have fallen asleep. No, nobody falls asleep. The being that we are remains always. It's like saying that the sun has set now because it's dark outside. No, the sun hasn't set. The sun's always in the same place. The awareness of being is always the same experience, always shining brightly, but more or less veiled by the content of experience. And so from the erroneous point of view of the finite mind says, okay, we pass through three states. We don't. The being that we are, the only being there is, doesn't pass through states. It colors itself more or less with the content of experience, but it never passes through any states.
So when deep sleep is used, it's not necessarily meant as when we're fast asleep at night in that state of sleep where we're not dreaming.
From the point of view of the waking state, we think that there are three states: the waking state, the dreaming state, and deep sleep state. So from the point of view of the waking state, and we normally think that in the waking state we have the most accurate view of reality. So we believe that the view we have of deep sleep from the waking state is the correct view. From that point of view, the dream state is considered to be a state which alternates with the other two states of waking and dreaming. Now, if we believe that deep sleep is a state that occupies a third of our time, and the rest of the time when we're dreaming or waking, it is not present, then we have to conceptualize something that is not the three states, the fourth, Turiya, which is not any of the three states. So we have the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping, plus the fourth. But that's a problem, because now we have three states and something else, the fourth, consciousness. And if consciousness is something other than the three states, then it must be limited. That can't be right. So then we have to conceptualize the fifth, Duriyatita, which is not a fourth state compared to the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping, but is actually that which underlies all four. But actually, we can dispense with that. All of that is true if we believe the evidence of the waking state, namely that deep sleep is a state. Put all that on one side and consider the opposite point of view, that in deep sleep we are closest to reality, infinite formless being, and that the dream state is a distortion of that state, and the waking state is even further distorted. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. So from this point of view, deep sleep is not a state. It is infinite consciousness. So imagine, can I have your piece of paper? Yeah. No, the A4 bit of paper. Yeah. Don't worry, I'm not going to read any of it. Just give me the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, so now imagine you've got a sheet of paper like this. And this represents infinite consciousness. So if you were to color, take a band in the middle, and it's just one color, yes, it's just white. If you were to take a band in the middle here and color it red, and then color this blue, what would you now be looking at?
I'd be looking at...
Use the mic, please. Yeah.
I'd be looking at the paper.
You'd be looking at three colors, red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
So although the white is actually the entirety of what is, it now seems to have become a portion, a third of what is. It is no longer the whole, it's a part, it's a state. So this white section here, this white third, that's the deep sleep state. It seems to be a state in reference to the blue and the red. It seems that there are three states. There aren't three states. There's just the white paper, just infinite consciousness. But when infinite consciousness colors itself in the form of dreaming and waking, this portion seems to cease being infinite consciousness and seems to become a finite state. That's what we call the deep sleep state. Now, if we believe that, we then have to postulate another piece of white paper over here that is independent of these three states. But that's all based on the erroneous view of deep sleep from the perspective of the waking state. If you start with infinite reality, the white paper, infinite consciousness, and you just consider dreaming and waking as a temporary coloring, then this third is not a state. It's the revelation of the reality of the whole.
Yeah, and I get that.
And that's the higher understanding of deep sleep. You don't get that understanding in the classical Advaita tradition. The classical Advaita tradition gives you the first interpretation, the three states plus Turiya, the fourth plus Turiya, T to the fifth, and so on. It's a legitimate understanding. It's either a misunderstanding or a concession to the belief in the waking state's view of deep sleep. I'm not sure which. Okay. But there's a higher understanding, which is the one that I've just given you.
But you can be aware of awareness without the content of experience whilst being awake.
Yeah, awareness is always aware of itself. But for the same reason that the sun always illumines itself.
But would you differentiate between the awake state of awareness being aware of itself and being fast asleep at night in deep sleep? Because, like, in my mind, when I'm in deep sleep at night, I know that if my alarm was to go off, something's going to hear that, and that is awareness. But I'm not present of myself as awareness whilst I'm fast asleep.
How do you know? That's what your waking state mind tells you.
I have no memory.
Your waking state, what you've just said is your waking state mind tells you that deep sleep is the absence of awareness. How do you know that it's not the awareness of absence?
Okay.
You've just believed the waking state point. Do you see how deep, how profound our waking state view of reality is? That we're even. This is a good example of how even after we've had a genuine glimpse of our true nature, the old patterns of thinking persist. This deep belief we have, the waking state's view of deep sleep, that it is the absence of awareness, and therefore we really think, I do not have the experience of being in deep sleep. That's just what the waking state tells you. It's not your experience.
So so in deep sleep, if I do have the experience of being, I know
awareness has the experience of being in deep sleep. Yes.
Yeah. So if I have the experience of being in deep sleep, would you say that's the same as when I'm meditating, or even if I'm not meditating, but when I'm aware of myself as awareness in the waking state, when without the content of experience being present.
Yes, it's in deep meditation, in the absence of experience, there's just the awareness of being. That's the experience that shines as deep sleep.
But wouldn't there be some sort of like memory or?
No, there's nothing there to remember.
Or there's
no memory. There's nothing, because you can only remember something that is objective, that has some objective form.
Right.
There's nothing objective there to remember.
I think that's what I was getting at.
And that's why the mind says there's nothing there.
Okay.
Because there's nothing objective to remember there.
Okay.
So the mind then superimposes the absence of objects onto deep sleep and says it's a blank, empty void, because the mind knows nothing of consciousness, because it can only know objective experience. So from the mind's point of view, deep sleep is just a blank, empty void, but that's not our experience.
Okay, thank you. I will
really just ponder the possibility that in deep sleep, awareness is shining all alone. That the mind has no knowledge or memory of that experience because it can only know objective experience. But just think about deep sleep in a different way. Think of it as just the shining of being, the awareness of being. Just think of it of that way and see how your experience changes when you no longer superimpose the idea that deep sleep is a blank, empty void onto it.
So those moments then that I can remember from meditating today, would that be the moments when my mind comes back into the equation? Because
exactly. When everything you remember about this morning's meditation was not really this morning's meditation. It was all the words and feelings and thoughts that accompanied it.
Yeah.
You can't remember this morning's meditation, nor can I. There's nothing there to remember.
No,
we just remember the thoughts that precipitated it and arose from it. You don't actually remember why not? Because that experience is a blind spot. The mind can't know it. But it's not a blank, empty void. It's full of being and consciousness. But it's a blind spot for the mind, so that's why you can't remember it.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Rupert.
But you're on the right track. Keep going.
Thanks.